Member for North Vancouver Lonsdale.
Aye. Honourable Speaker, it is my privilege to rise today to move a motion that I believe really needs no debate. Be it resolved that this House...
Read the motion, please.
Be it resolved that this House support the celebration of diversity and recognize the importance of protecting human rights. May I proceed?
Honourable members, unanimous consent of the House is required to proceed with motion 6 without disturbing the priorities of the motions preceding it on the order paper. Is leave granted? Aye. Against? Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On second thought, perhaps this motion isn't as obvious as it really should be. After all, we were the only province in the country without a Human Rights Commission for nearly 16 years, and the previous government seemed perfectly content with this, as though it was not needed. But Mr. Speaker, I insist, it absolutely is needed. I am the MLA for a beautiful, diverse riding. But like other places in this great province, my riding is not perfect and is not immune to the effects of intolerance, prejudice, and hatred. As the Canadian-born daughter of immigrants and person of color, I have experienced intolerance firsthand as well. It is no secret that my recent election campaign was a target for some race-related aggressions. It was much reported on in the media that my election campaign signs were vandalized with swastikas, as were those of other candidates like former MLA Naomi Yamamoto. The truth is, there was a lot more going on than what was reported on. My volunteers received negative feedback about my ethnic heritage on doorsteps. My campaign office, which prominently featured my photo as well as the photo of my West Vancouver Capilano colleague, Mr. Mehdi Russell, who was born in Iran, would receive visitors who would shout intolerant phrases through our doors. I was approached with prejudicial comments on the streets, and I was given advice on how to overcome attributes I supposedly had because of my ethnic background from people who had only known me for seconds. But these visible and audible acts of discrimination are only one shallow element of intolerance. Like a glacier, they represent only what has risen to the top. Most of what emboldens this behavior lies beneath the surface of the water. There are the jokes that we think are harmless. There are the thinly veiled articles printed in papers. There are the conversations between friends made by people passing by my campaign office who did not realize that the volunteers inside could hear them. There are the private conversations around the dinner table that color the way children feel about their peers. And when former Premier Christy Clark was asked about the swastikas on Miss Yamamoto's campaign signs, she brushed it off, saying dumb people, or pardon me, people do dumb stuff during campaigns. And then she went on to imply that the NDP campaign, my campaign, was responsible for these reprehensible acts. The former Premier Clark might have been content to dismiss the incident, but if you were monitoring the Twitter sphere, it was clear that the incident had deeply upset her candidate, Ms. Yamamoto, and she had every right to be upset because hate is upsetting and it is unacceptable. It was also unacceptable when hate-filled transphobic flyers targeting NDP candidate Morgane Auger were distributed throughout Vancouver Falls Creek during the election. As it was unacceptable that newly elected leader of the federal NDP, Jagmeet Singh, faced numerous accusations of being a terrorist because he wears a turban. Politics is not the only place where discrimination reveals itself, of course. There are countless experiences that we can all point to in this world. And then there are the many more acts of love, of compassion, of tolerance, of unity and hope that British Columbia is more than capable of. In North Vancouver, candidates from all parties spoke out to denounce the hatred represented by the swastikas on our signs. In Vancouver Falls Creek, Morgane Auger's primary rival, the current member for Vancouver Falls Creek, decried the hatred expressed against Ms. Auger, defending her voice as an important contribution to the province's political discourse. The coming together of people across party lines to defend against discrimination and acts against the progress of human rights is significant. It is part of our role in fighting against hatred and intolerance and moving towards true equality. There are those out there who will use our differences to divide us, to segregate us, to turn us against each other. But the vast majority of us in British Columbia know that our diversity is our strength, and this House must provide the leadership required to demonstrate and celebrate how diversity can be a source of power that unites us. To fight intolerance, we cannot simply react to intolerance. We must overcome it. Our job as elected representatives of the beautiful, beautiful mosaic that forms this province, and the job of the Human Rights Commission, is to continue the hard work of emboldening those acts of love and of tolerance, so that these values speak much more loudly than those of intolerance. This is the kind of leadership, and this is the kind of work that the province must provide leadership for. Thank you.